Whenever I do a garden tour, I get the same question over and over again. Do you rotate your crops? So we're going to talk about that today. I only rotate my crops when it's necessary. And in this bed right here, it might be necessary this year. I'll get into that in a minute. First, I want to talk about what crop rotation is and why it's done. Crop rotation is one of the oldest agricultural practices in the book, and it's still practiced today, especially on large monocropping farms, big farms with one crop. Crops are rotated because if one crop stays in a particular field for any length of time, year after year, every year it's going to build up certain pests and diseases that like that one particular crop. So every year that's going to get worse. Year after year, the spores from whatever disease it is or pests overwinter in the ground there. And they're just ready next year when it's time for that crop again. By moving crops around from place to place and never having the same crop in the same field more than every 4 years, it gives the field 3 or 4 years to completely rid itself of whatever that disease or pest happened to be. So by the time, you plant it again 3 or 4 years later, it can take on a fresh life. There's no remaining bad things in the soil that are going to be after that one particular crop. Another reason to rotate crops is if you grow the same crop in the same field year after year after year, that particular crop likes one set of nutrients. It may like more nitrogen, more phosphorus, more potassium, and some of the other trace minerals and things like that. So year after year, that same crop is pulling the same nutrients out of the soil, depleting it more and more. So you might grow peppers one year and think, wow, peppers love this place. Look how great they did. So I'm going to plant them here next year. They'll probably do a little worse next year, because the first year's peppers already took the nutrients it wanted. Second year, they'll take the same ones. Third year, for sure, you're not going to have a great time if you're not adding nutrients. Now, big farms get around this by dumping loads of synthetic fertilizers all over the fields. So this practice has not just been used on large-scale farms. Home gardeners have used this for a long time as well. Now, traditionally, the way it would work is you have to know each plant family, because you separate the beds, if you're growing in a home garden, by plant family. So you don't plant the same plant family more than once every 4 or 5 years. So to do traditional crop rotation, you have to know the plant family. So the first one is the allium family. That includes chives, garlic, onions, and shallots. The next group are the nightshades. That's probably the most popular family in the garden. You've got tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, and potatoes. And one family has over 900,000 species. It's the cucurbit family. Things like gourds, melons, summer and winter squash, cucumbers, zucchini, pumpkins. Then the legume family contains all of the important nitrogen-fixing plants like alfalfa, beans, cowpeas, clover, hairy vetch, peas, and peanuts. And then there are the brassicas. These are cool season crops that include broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, collard greens, mustard, kale, kohlrabi, radishes, and turnips. So if you're following the traditional crop rotation plan, that's 5 families, so you need 5 areas in your garden that you can rotate these families between. While the traditional way of crop rotation has been obviously successful, it's a bit tedious. Many gardeners, including myself, after the second year, pretty much give up. If you've done it longer than that, let me know in the comments. That's amazing. There is another more effective way, maybe not more effective, but definitely easier to keep track of. It's called the 4-step method. Now, this allows you to get the same benefits as regular crop rotation, but it's a little easier to manage. Now, just to note, I go through this in detail in my book, Companion Planting for Beginners, but I'm going to break it down really simple here. This video is brought to you by Reolink. I've been using the Reolink security cameras for many months now. During that time, there hasn't been one hiccup. They work great. And the cool thing is, I've heard from many of you who have them and love them as well. Up until now, I've had all solar versions. They're practically plug and play, installing in 15 to 20 minutes. They're 4K, full color, They have night vision, they have great sound, they're motion activated, and at any time I can pull up on my phone any camera and see what's going on and hear what's going on. They also have SD cards in them, so I can pull up video from months ago. I just received this version from Reolink, which is a powered version, and it actually hooks into any wall electrical box like you would find for a porch light or an outdoor floodlight. In fact, this one's got 2 floodlights and 2 cameras that covers a 180-degree panoramic view. Even adjustable color temperature. So if you're more of like me and you like the warm white versus the cold white, you can choose that. You can also choose how you want these lights to work. They can be on all the time, they can do a dawn to dusk feature, or they can just be simply motion activated. And get this, they have an AI-enabled search on these cameras where you can just look for delivery guy wearing red, and it will pull up the video with the delivery guy wearing red. Between this new camera and all the others, we now have a full 360-degree protection on our house and property. It's a great time to take advantage of their lowest price of the year, their Black Friday sale, and I'm going to leave a link down below in the video description. So the 4 steps, you just need to remember 4 things. Legume, leaf, fruit, root. Say it with me. Legume, leaf, fruit, root. So starting out in one location in your garden like this bed here, I happen to have corn in this one, but we're going to pretend that it's legumes. I've got beans here or peas here. Now legumes or other beans and things, like I said, those belong to the same plant family. And they are nitrogen fixing, meaning they collect nitrogen from the air, fix it in their root systems, and if they don't use it all, the next crop that follows them can take advantage of the leftovers. So in this bed, legumes would go first, or in any bed, legumes would go first. The following year, we go with leaf plants because they take more nitrogen than any of the rest of the family. So this corn here, most of it is leaves, especially in the beginning, and so they need a lot of nitrogen to keep going. So after the beans, the next year, I would move corn, lettuce, any other leafy type plant into that bed. Now, we are going to add the entire brassica family into the leaf section because most brassicas, the leaves are what you eat. Except for broccoli, cauliflower, that's, the flowers. But we're lumping them in with leaves because there is no flower section. So that was year 2. So we got legumes the first year, leaves the second year, and then moving into this bed in the third year is fruits. Now, a lot of things in the garden are fruits, even though we find them in the vegetable section of the grocery store. So that would be things like tomatoes, eggplants, all the squashes, melons, all of those things are technically fruit. So fruits come next because they don't take as much nitrogen. They want more phosphorus, which last year's plants didn't take a lot of. So fruits are going to grow in this bed. And then the last year, year number 4, would be our root crops. Potatoes, carrots, beets, parsnips, sweet potatoes, all of those things, because they need a lot of potassium. And that is the most of what's left. Of course, every year we're going to be adding in organic fertilizer because each of these things take all of the nutrients. We're just planning on what takes the most. But in this system, then, the same plant family, we'd start over again with legumes in this bed, and that would be 4 years later. So it's just a simpler way to keep things organized. Is it a legume, a leaf, a fruit, a root? Now, the big question. Do I use either of those methods? I've already told you, not really, not unless it's necessary. The bottom line is I mix things up from year to year, but I don't necessarily review the notes of last year and have this stringent plan that I have to stick to. And some things, stay in the same place every year. My trellis up here, it's always in the same place. It doesn't move. That's for my tomatoes. And that's what a lot of people will see that and they'll say, do I have to move my trellis every year? No. Except I might have to move one of my beds. I'll get to that again in just a second. So what do I do to not have to rotate my crops every year? Well, number 1, I got to make sure the soil is healthy. So every spring or fall, we grow through the winter here. If you just grow spring and summer, every spring I put a good 2 inches of nice, fresh, good compost, homemade if you can get it. And I top the beds off. I don't dig it in, just leave it right on top and let the worms and all those good soil bacteria and everything, work that into the soil, get it down to the root level. The second thing I do is I mulch my beds. Now I happen to use pine shavings it's like pet bedding. I get it at the feed store. But you can use any organic material you want. Pine shavings, pine needles, newspaper, grass clippings, leaves, anything that's going to cover that soil. And what that's going to do is that's going to put a barrier between the rain, or if you water from above, which you shouldn't, I'll get there in a minute. But when the rain splashes on the soil, especially if you don't put mulch or that 2-inch layer of compost, it is going to take the soil-borne bacteria that's there laying on top of the ground from last year, and it's going to ride that raindrop from the splash from the ground up to the top and get on the plants, and that's where that bacteria is going to proliferate and take down your plants. Now, if you don't live where it rains in the summer, like me, that helps, but if you water from above, it's the same thing. So I recommend strongly drip irrigation. And that is going to keep the water down under the mulch, so it's never going to see the light of day. You're going to save water that way, but it's also not going to have any splashback from the ground up to the plants. Fertilizing every couple of weeks with an organic fertilizer throughout the growing season is just going to keep things topped up, nutrient-wise. And then for other diseases and pests, some good companion planting strategies. Again, my book is going to show you a ton of those, as well as some other videos I've done on companion planting here on the channel. And then just keep an eye on things. You know, a daily walk through the garden does so much good. You're going to catch things before they get, out of control. Now, back to the tomatoes and why I am going to have to do a little rotation this year. So we've got tomatoes over here, but we don't have any here. The tomatoes in this bed, I actually planted too early. We had an event coming up. We're going to have a film crew here, and I wanted to have things, well on their way in the garden. And so I put them out a little earlier than I should have when it was still a little cold, and they got some kind of fungal disease. Now, the year prior, last year, when I pulled out the plants at the end of the season, I noticed that the roots had some little knobbly bits to it, little nodules on it. Tomatoes aren't nitrogen fixers, so it wasn't that. It almost looked like root knot nematode, but it must have just been starting like late in the season, if that's what it was. I don't know what it was for sure. So I don't know if those two are related, but either way, with 2 years in a row of bad tomato plants in here, I'm not going to be growing tomatoes in here for a few years. The bottom line is, as home gardeners, we really don't need to worry about regimented crop rotation. Keep an eye on things, keep the soil healthy, watch for pests, water from below, mulch, and do some companion planting, and you'll be fine. If you do happen to get some kind of disease, especially something in the soil, systemic, it's in the roots, it's in the stems of the plants, then at that point, you might want to think about moving that crop to another place for a few years to let that bed kind of just mellow out. If you're coming to the end of your garden season and you do not or cannot grow a fall and winter garden, click this video right here. It's going to show you how to put your beds to sleep for the winter so they're raring to go and healthier in the spring than they are right now.